of a seed is known only when it sprouts and grows. The worth of a man is known only through his actions. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. That evening, all his neighbors came around to express their sympathy and pity. They said, "We are so sorry to hear your horse has run away. This is most unfortunate." The farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, the horse came back, bringing 7 wild horses with it. And in the evening, everybody came back and said, "Oh, isn't that good luck? What a great turn of events." The farmer again said, "Maybe." The following day, his son tried to break one of the horses, and while riding it, he was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbors then said, "Oh dear, that's too bad." And the farmer responded, "Maybe." The next day, the conscription officers came around to conscript people into the army, and they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. Again, all the neighbors came around and said, "Isn't that great?" But the farmer said again, "Maybe." The whole process of nature is an integrated process of immense complexity. The whole process of nature is an integrated process of immense complexity. And it's really impossible to tell whether anything that happens in it is good or bad. Because you never know what will be the consequences of the misfortune, or you never know what will be the consequences of what we call good fortune. Alan Watts. Good morning, everyone. So good to be virtually here for many. Oh my gosh, it's not yet over, huh? We're still wearing masks. I'm not. Well, I'm far away from you. I'm from all of you. But really, what do we do? Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. I guess that's very timely and appropriate for today's world. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would. Mr. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, said this probably sometime when he was kicked out of Rome by the then Emperor Domitian, one of the most tyrannical emperors in the history of Rome. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. It did flow well for him. He moved to Nicopolis, northwest Greece, and reestablished his school where he continued teaching the Stoic philosophy. Well, I know most of you must be thinking, what is this, Swami? Stoic? Really? What are you up to? Well, I know many of you must be thinking when I don't want to end up saying all the time, maybe, right? But I think we should blame it to the pandemic. I did make it a point to investigate more and more into other ways or sources of wisdom to share with you guys another outlook or point of view of the same truth. It's also because Stoicism is not what we think it is, or what is popularly believed to be. Stoicism presently is equated to suffering without complaint. The thing is, the Stoics would be, or would probably be glad to complain if it helped anything. But unfortunately, it doesn't. Stoicism is also thought to mean grim or poker face. Some think of the Stoics to remove themselves from the world, which is also inaccurate. As Ward Farnsworth says in his book, The Practicing Stoic, the result of all this confusion is a minor nuisance for the student of this subject. Most people don't know what Stoicism is, but they don't know that they don't know. Interesting. I have been moved many times by Marcus Aurelius as well as Seneca's quotes. I was always kind of curious about this philosophy, and well, as I said, I decided to investigate and go deeper into it. And as you know, I'm always trying to find ways to convince people that they should lead a spiritual life, that they should be spiritual. And to be honest with you, I was pleasantly surprised. Such a satisfactory feeling after reading a bunch of books. You know, to convince people or to actually share my conviction that a spiritual life is worth it is not easy, particularly in the Western world, where, you know, nobody wants to listen. And when you bring up the idea of God, you know, or even devotion, kind of like people feel a little uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. Next time, maybe. But I want to assure you that I will keep trying. I will keep trying to find sources to convey this to you. One of the most appealing things about Vedanta is that you can integrate any tool, any means, whether it belongs to another tradition, religion, or denomination. It doesn't matter. As long as it helps us, as long as it inspires us to commit to our spiritual life, it's absolutely valid and true. Hope you agree with me. After reading Stoicism, I found myself saying, oh ma, I have been most of my adult time a Stoic, and I didn't know. What a surprise. Well, I'm so excited because I think I have finally found another means to convey to you a true and pure spirituality. true and pure spirituality, but in Western language. You see, we all come to this world, as you know, in a very minimalistic way, just with a bare body. And then we are introduced to so many ideas of what is good and what is bad, etc. Our life experience starts taking so many shades of colors without allowing us to have a say about them. True, of course, it's all for our good. As we grow up, we start receiving an education, first from our parents and then from our teachers. That's cool. So far, so good. And that's because our parents are responsible for us. We can still feel some kind of freedom, provided, of course, we obey. As we imbibe values and guidance from others, you can also add the TV or TV shows, most of us just follow what others do without much thinking. Most of us just follow what others do without much inquiring, without much questioning. What is life and how are we supposed to live it? What do I really want for me in my life? Am I truly thriving in life? What do I aspire for as a human being? We take lots of classes, now online of course, and get a more refined training in college, but really very few inquire about the most important class we should take, the most important subject to dive deep into. That is, how to live my life. How do I live my life? We learn many lessons, mostly by mistakes, because, nobody wants to listen to anybody. But it's hard to find an education that can provide us with the following subjects: human nature and its management. How to confront challenging situations in today's world. How do I confront my passions, my fears, my attachments? How do I respond to provocation? How can I develop self-confidence? How do I overcome depression and anxiety? How to live a life based on eternal values that match my convictions? Or as Swami Dhyanayogananda said or put it, how can I learn how to concentrate? Those who have read Swamiji, you know exactly what I mean. He said, if I were born again and I had to start my education again, I would just learn only how to concentrate. In all ancient cultures, the first thing was to equip the student with the necessary tools to face life. They trained kids on how to live. Today, especially in the Western world, we are pretty much on our own. We find some answers in religion, maybe, in some philosophies. All of them provide some element or other, and why not? We should become philosophers. We should have our own philosophy of life. A philosopher is one who knows the fundamental thing, that is, how to live. Like in ancient times, we need to invest ourselves in what is essential first. We need to learn how to lead a good life, and it has to be the most satisfying life possible. Vedanta opens up the door to the fundamental truth about ourselves. Vedanta analyzes every single aspect of our life and delivers so many tools and techniques to overcome our human nature. Vedanta offers us so much clarity. Well, sometimes it's confusing. It helps us deal with our human constitution and our relationship with the sense world. And because of that, it encourages us to embrace all sorts of religious and spiritual practices. Because yes, Vedanta tells us, first and foremost, we are spiritual beings living a human experience. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do, says Epictetus. First, say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. I think this is a very important question, because it really puts us face to face with a choice in our life. What do we want? How do we want to be? How do we want to lead this life? And of course, in all our Upanishads, they said either one or the other. The life of enjoyments or the life of perfection. That's it. Now, what is Stoicism all about? Well, Stoicism also wants us to live the best life possible. It tells us about the art of living. It teaches how to live a supremely happy and smoothly flowing life, and how to maintain it also, even while facing adversity. Epictetus says, how long are you going to wait? How long are you going to wait before you start demanding the best of yourself? Life is right now. And there is an endless training before it becomes a second nature. Now, the practical art of living dimension of Stoicism holds two main promises. There are promises. Vedanta also has promises for us. The promise number one is called eudaimonia. I know, sorry. Technical language. Eu means good. Demon or daemon, I know, don't be afraid, it's just the inner spirit, the good one, the divine spark. Which means be good with your inner spirit. Live in harmony with your highest self. So far, very Vedantic. For the Stoics and all other schools of ancient philosophy, the ultimate goal was this eudaimonia. That is, to become good with your inner demon, with your inner self, to make friends with it, to establish a relationship. That's how we put it in Vedanta. The Stoics believe that nature wants us to become the highest version of ourselves. And listen, it says nature. Believe that nature wants us to become the highest version of ourselves. Very Vedantic, I will explain later. It is our nature to complete what has been started with that divine seed and bring our human potential to life. To become good with our inner demon, to live in harmony with our idea of self is, therefore, to get a close as close as possible to that high potential self. We should close the gap between who we are capable of being, our ideal self, and who we actually are in this particular moment. We should close the gap as much as possible. Eudaimonia, the goal of the Stoics, the goal of life, to be good to yourself, to your higher self, means happiness, fulfillment, purnam. The translation also is, or can be said to be, flourishing or thriving. Now, this is the promise number one. There is another promise, which is you are going to get emotional resilience. Now, emotional resilience can also be what we see in the Sthita Prajna, in the man of steady wisdom. He is a man who has mastered his emotions. To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden. To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher. No tree becomes deep-rooted and sturdy unless strong winds blow against it. This shaking and pulling is what makes the tree tighten its grip and plant its root more securely. The fragile trees are those who grow in sunny valleys. Why then, asks Seneca, do you wonder that good men are shaken in order that they may grow strong? Just like the trees, or for the trees, heavy rain and strong winds are to the advantage of good people. It's how they may grow calm, disciplined, humble, and strong. I love it. Marcus Aurelius similarly says, the art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. It's his opinion. More like wrestling than dancing. We need to be prepared for sudden attacks. Nobody will ever tackle a dancer. The dancer will never get choked by adversity like a wrestler. No matter what happens in our lives, we are ready for anything. We are prepared to take hooks and side kicks. Never give up and make the best of it. According to the Stoics, most of us are enslaved to passions, strong negative emotions, such as irrational fear, grief, and anger. If we want to be able to act like our ideal self, says the Stoics, we need to keep our emotions in check. We need to tame them so they won't get in the way of our good life. That means tame restricting emotions. It doesn't mean actually unemotional. The promise of Stoic philosophy consists on both the supremely happy life, eudaimonia, and the preparation, ready for anything, the training to deal effectively with whatever life throws at us. With whatever life throws at us. Stoics identified strong emotions as our ultimate weakness or weaknesses, especially when we let them dictate our behavior. They are toxic to eudaimonia, and they are at the root of all human suffering. Now, after this introduction to the Stoic philosophy, I ask you, isn't this all familiar to us? Very, very familiar. Open the Bhagavad Gita. Same. In Vedanta, we talk about the same goal of life, that is to express, to manifest our own nature, our divinity, by living in harmony with nature, knowing how nature can affect us if we are not in control of ourselves. And for that, we need to use our unique human capacity. It's a great demand from Vedanta upon us. Our intellect, our reason, so that we become the master of our emotions. Now, Stoicism has nothing to do with suppressing or hiding one's emotions or being emotionless, as it is believed. It's about acknowledging our emotions, reflecting on what causes them, just like in Vedanta. What is the root cause? What started it? And learning to redirect them for our own good. Now, how can we tame our emotions? How can we achieve eudaimonia, the goal of the Stoics? Author Jonas Salzberg says 3 things. Later on, we will talk about them as the 3 pillars of the Stoic philosophy. First, live in what we call arete. I will explain. Second, focus on what you can control. And third, take responsibility. Live with arete. Now, if you follow this path, it can be described as a triangle. In the center, at the core of this triangle, is eudaimonia, is the goal of life. Live with arete. This Greek word means virtue, excellence. But it carries also a profounder meaning, expressing the highest version of yourself in every moment. Expressing the highest version of yourself in every moment. If we want to be on good terms with our highest self, we need to close the gap between what we are capable of and what we are actually doing. This is really about being your best version in the here and now. Now, the second pillar, focus on what you can control. If you follow virtue, that's one of the steps to reach eudaimonia, the goal of the Stoics. Now, the second pillar is focus on what you can control. This is the most prominent principle in Stoicism. We need to focus on things we can control and take the rest as it happens. What's beyond our power is ultimately not important for our flourishing. What's important for our flourishing is what we choose to do with the given external circumstances. Now, this is beautiful. It's always within our power to try to make the best with it and to live in harmony with our ideal self, arete. The third pillar or leg. Take charge, take responsibility. Good and bad come solely from ourselves. Good and bad come solely from ourselves. It's us. We are responsible of that or for that. So living in with arete, which is within your control, is enough to flourish in our life. Now, living in arete, even though now it sounds a little bit abstract, as it usually is when we try to express things that are mostly realizations, as we put it in Vedanta, it will take a better shape later on when it is described as values. So living with arete, which is within our control, is enough to flourish in life. You are responsible for your life because every external event you don't control offers an area you can control. Every external event you don't control offers an area you can control, namely how you choose to respond to it. It's not events that makes us happy or miserable, but our interpretation of the events. Superb. Our judgment. How we see and perceive things. It's on us. Now, Stoicism is based on a crucial premise that we should live our life according to nature, in harmony with nature. According to Stoicism, human nature fundamentally consists of two aspects. The first one is that we are social animals. We can survive on our own if we have to, but we only thrive in groups of people. We only thrive when we have healthy social networks, when we can talk with one another, when we can share. That's very human. Another aspect of this nature, this human nature, is that we are capable of reason, that we are social animals, and that we are capable of reason. I know sometimes we just don't want to show it off too much. That's a problem. For the Stoics, it follows that the best kind of human life you can actually have is one in which you apply your reason, you apply your intellect, your intelligence to improve your social living, to improve everybody else's life around you. Magnifique. Now, in order to live in or with arete, in harmony with yourself, the Stoics say that the highest version of yourself is living in agreement with nature. What does it mean? In Vedantic language, we are just not only spiritual beings. We have to live in harmony. What's going on around us? Make sense of our roles in life. Living in agreement with nature. The Stoics believe that nature wants us to thrive in life only if we tune with it. We have it in our natural potential. We have it in our natural potential to become the highest version of ourselves. Another Stoic philosopher, Musonius Rufus, said, we are all born with an inclination. We are all born with an inclination towards virtue, towards arete. It's not for nothing that we admire and honor personalities who represent these high values in life. We'll come to that later. It's our nature to complete what has been started with that divine seed and bring our human potential to life. So far, again, very, very Vedantic. Now, with a different light. I cannot like it. A person's virtue depends on their excellence as a human being, on how well they perform their natural potential, how well they can integrate. To be virtuous, then, is to live as nature designed us to live. Virtue is the same thing for all living beings, the perfection of our own nature. What can be perfect? Atman, the self, Brahman. To be virtuous, then, is to live as nature designed us to live. Living with arete, with virtue, is basically to complete our nature, to achieve perfection. Without that completion, we lack something, and our lives will remain unfulfilled. If we don't live up to our innate potential, we will never be fulfilled. Let's look at an example in nature. The natural potential of a grape seed is to grow into a grapevine, or any seed actually, and bear grapes. So a grape seed lives with arete, or in agreement with nature, when it fulfills its natural potential by growing into a grapevine and produce grapes. This is manava dharma, we call it in Sanskrit, when it comes to human beings. To fulfill our natural potential. It's enough for us to express the highest version of ourselves, moment to moment to moment. It's enough if we try hard to be our best at every moment. We are in the process of evolving and fulfill that goal, just like the grape seed with the grapevine. In our case, to become completely realized souls. Nothing external is required to get to the good life. The potential to live the good life is within all of us, whether you are rich, whether you are poor, healthy or sick, mother-like beautiful, or other kind of beautiful. All of us can get to that good life. Your natural potential lies in your highest version of yourself. Now, the Stoics argued that the most significant difference with other animals is the human ability to use reason. That makes sense. Vedanta emphasizes the same. The Stoic teacher Epictetus explained that what separates us from wild beasts and sheep is our rational element, and not the naked skin or weaker bones, etc. Epictetus' point is that our ability to use reason is at the core of our natural potential we need to fulfill. The ability to use reason is at the core of our natural potential we need to fulfill. And it shows best in our actions. It shows best in our actions by expressing it moment to moment. On one hand, the ability to use reason is our most precious gift. And if we live by it, we will have a happy and smoothly flowing life, like a grapevine that produces wonderful grapes. On the other hand, it's our heaviest burden, because if we fail to live by it, we fall to the level of a beast, negate our humanity, and won't live a happy life, much like a grapevine that fails to produce edible grapes. The perfection of reason not only includes rational, but also social actions in the form of duties to our fellow men, such as honoring our parents, being agreeable to our friends, and being interested in the well-being of mankind. As rational and social creatures, we should therefore apply reason and express our highest self to three main areas of our lives: our own mind, with other people, in the universe. This whole arete, virtue, reason, and fulfilling our nature idea is highly abstract, as I said before, and it's difficult to have a clear understanding of how this looks like in practice. So the Stoics used a more graspable classification of virtue, or arete, that divided it into 4 desirable character traits, known as the 4 cardinal virtues. Probably most of you might have heard about them. The Stoics also used the sage as an ideal. Just like us, we use the standard, our standard, the realized soul, the yogi, the sthita prajna. Because in fact, we try to be perfect in our life. In their case, they're already perfected souls. This is why the Stoic contemplates the sage, because he follows reason and accepts his fate graciously insofar as it is beyond his control. He has rising above irrational desires and emotions and achieve peace of mind. The Stoics say it's beneficial to have someone to look up to compare ourselves against. And this is a very important point, because in our Vedantic practice, we also embrace sages, teachers as our standard. We even meditate on them. Let's look at the 4 virtues with which we can try to deliver a sage-like performance. And this will make more sense now. Now, these three pillars we mentioned before, living in arete, focus on which you can control, and the third one, taking responsibility, will be brought up again in the light of this sage. These fundamental pillars of the Stoic philosophy, which apply in a very practical way into our lives, are the first pillar. The first pillar is the core of the 4 cardinal virtues. Now they are called the 4 cardinal virtues. Before we call it just arete, or character traits, were adopted from the Socratic philosophy. This is just so you know. Living by these qualities makes you a strong character by taking honorable and praiseworthy actions, just like a sage. The opposite, immoral and wicked character traits, the 4 cardinal vices, are known as kakya. Kakya opposes arete, and it makes you a weak character that shows us shameful and ignorant behavior, just like the demons in our Puranas. The qualities of strong characters are practical wisdom, is the knowledge of what is good for you and what is not good for you. What is good and what is not good, the wisdom. Wisdom includes excellent deliberation. It's like being in sattva all the time. Wisdom that includes excellent deliberation, healthy judgment, a perspective, a good sense. It opposes the vice and folly or thoughtlessness. Second, the second quality of a good character, or these four virtues, justice, is what tells you what is the right thing, is how to interact with other people, how to treat other people. Justice includes good-heartedness, integrity, public service, fairness. It opposes vice of wrongdoing, of injustice. The third one, courage, is not just physical, but especially moral courage to stand up to do the right thing. Courage includes bravery, perseverance, honesty, and confidence. It opposes the vice of cowardice. The last one, self-discipline or temperance, which is the idea that you should always do things in right measure, not overdoing them, no underdoing them. It's about knowing how to act and feel right, despite emotions such as a strong desire, inner resistance, or lust. Self-discipline includes orderliness, self-control, forgiveness, and humility. It opposes the vice of excess. Now, the second pillar, do you remember the second pillar? To focus on the things you can control. Now it's described here in a more sort of traditional or academic way as the dichotomy of control. This is the very basic idea, again, that some things are up to us and other things are not up to us. Epictetus says, some things are within our power while others are not. It's really about the recognition of three levels of influence we have over the world. High influence, our choices in judgments and actions. High influence. Partial influence. We have partial control over our health, wealth, relationships, and outcomes of our behavior. No influence at all. We have no control when it comes to weather, ethnicity, and most external circumstances. The idea is that we can do things, we can make decisions about our health, our reputation, etc., but ultimately, we don't control the outcome. What does it mean in practice? It means that we should try to walk through life by internalizing our goals without worrying about the outcomes, because those are outside of our control, but worry about our intentions and our efforts, because those are very much in our control. It reminds you of the philosophy of karma yoga. Imagine you are an archer. Imagine you are trying to hit a target. What is under your control? In the practice of archery, you can practice for hours and hours and hours. You can choose the best bows and arrows that are available to you. You can take care of those bows and arrows. You can focus up until the second in which you let the arrow go. But after that, things are completely outside of your control. A gust of wind can ruin your best shot. The target may move, especially if he's an enemy soldier and you missed. So what do? The actual hitting of the mark would be the one to be chosen, but not the desire, not to be desired. The actual hitting of the mark would be the one to be chosen, but not to be desired. So you do not attach your own self-esteem to the outcome. You only attach it to what's under your control, to your attempt to try your best. You need to define what is the locus of your control. Focus on the process. The Stoics realized that the process will affect the outcome. The process is about our behavior, deliberate practice, and all that prepares us to shoot well. Success, then, is defined by our effort to do everything that's within our power. Another way to describe what karma yoga is all about. We succeed or fail already in the process. The Stoic archer focuses on the process, preparing and shooting well, a possible positive outcome, hitting the target, on aroused jubilation, and a possible negative outcome, missing the target, won't arouse despair. Anxiety and inner disturbance comes from wanting things out of control. Bear with me. I'm almost done. Almost. Anxiety and inner disturbance come from wanting things out of our control. So if you take this seriously, Epictetus says, you will in fact have a happy life because great part of your happiness lies in the serenity, into the idea that you always walk through life by knowing that you have done your best, and then nothing else could be done. The internalization of this basic truth that we can control our actions but not their outcomes makes us confident because we have given all that was in our power, and this confidence lets us calmly accept whatever happens. So far, living in arete, in virtue, practicing the 4 virtues, by just focusing on what you can control. Now, the 3rd pillar is put in the light of a sage as taking responsibility. Another aspect mastered by the sages is the good, the bad, and the indifferent. Of things, some are good, some are bad, and some are indifferent. Epictetus and the Stoics did not only differentiate between what's up to us and what's not, but also between what is good, bad, and indifferent. Marcus Aurelius says in his Meditation 8:47, if any external thing causes you distress, it is not the thing itself that troubles you. If any external thing causes you distress, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your own judgment about it. Wonderful. And this, you have the power to eliminate now. Good things, all that is virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, self-discipline. Bad things, all that is vice, folly, injustice, cowardice. Indifferent things, everything else, life and death, health and sickness, wealth and poverty, pleasure and pain, reputation and bad repute. The good and the bad things can only be found in our behavior. It's all within our reach. It's all within our power. Our actions matter greatly. And the development of one's own character is all that counts for a good life. The same is true for an unhappy life. It comes from vicious behavior, no matter the external circumstances. The only good then is living in accordance with nature, fulfilling our natural potential and thus living by the virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. Epictetus talks about a father. It's an example. Who is very worried because his daughter just is very sick. And he can't take it. So he decides to leave the house and leaves the whole burden on his wife, his daughter. Epictetus says, wait a minute, do you think you were right to have acted that way? The father thinks about it for a minute and says, well, I was devastated. I couldn't bear the pain. All that brings up the distinction between what is natural to us, our feeling. You don't have control over your feelings. It just happens. If you are hurt because your daughter is sick, there is nothing you can do or should probably do about it. But that's the difference from the ethical point of view, the ethical duty of you as a father. The ethical duty you have over your daughter. You are her father. You are supposed to stay there, even though it does cost you in terms of emotional energy. So the two virtues that come into play here are courage to actually do the right thing, to stay with the daughter, and justice. That is, do the just thing, the correct thing for your daughter by taking responsibility. We will also have to balance social roles, and this has to do with two other virtues like practical wisdom, the idea of knowing the difference between what is good for you and what is not good for you, and discipline or temperance, the idea that you can balance things by putting the right amount of energy into everything you do. Epictetus explains it this way. Reflect on the other social roles, and this is very important and very interesting. Epictetus explains this in this way. Reflect on the other social roles you play. If you were young, or if you are young, what does it mean to be young? If you are old, what does age imply? If you are a father, what does fatherhood entail? Each of our thoughts, such as the acts appropriate to it. Imagine that you are an actor, says Epictetus. You play a role. Now the role is not completely determined. You can play the role of a mother, for instance, in many different ways. You don't have to play it in the way in which society at large tells you to play. You just have to play in the way you think it's the right way to play it. Imagine you are an actor, but still you are a mother or a father, so you have certain duties. The way to exercise these duties is up to you. Now, how do we learn to play well our roles in life? There are many ways the Stoics were famous for a number of exercises, practical exercises about these things. But fundamentally, one of the best ways to practice is simply imagine people. that actually do well, people that are your role models, people that you can see and use as patterns after which you can change your own life. And this is us when we are introduced to the idea of God, to the idea of a teacher, to meditate and focus our mind upon a great character, which we are to become if we meditate upon it. The ancients used people that they knew, real people, people that they have heard about, or even imaginary people also. But they were beings, human forms with name and forms. In the Stoic tradition, an ancient role model was Marcus Porcius Cato, known as Cato the Younger, was a Stoic philosopher and a Roman senator. He had such a level of integrity that when people in Rome did something wrong, they made a mistake or they didn't know, they didn't hold up to their expectations, they would say, well, not everybody can be a Cato. But there are also modern models. We can also embrace superheroes that represent high values. Swami, do you have a superhero? Yes, of course. I have my superhero. He's sitting there. We don't have amazing powers, but we have the power to exercise choices. And that power comes with the responsibility of exercising the best choice we can possibly make at every moment. So the general idea, according to Epictetus, is that just like actors in the ancient world, in ancient Greece, there were a number of masks, and they changed them continuously. The same actor would come out on the stage and wear a different mask, and the mask would tell the audience which character he was playing in that particular moment. And it would remind the actor himself that he was not playing a different character, but the one that was represented by the mask. The idea is that a happy life is in fact a life well balanced, where you play all these roles as the best actor you can possibly be. Now, I found this very beautiful. Vivekananda also shares the same idea, and I will end with this. Vivekananda says, man, the infinite, the impersonal man, is manifesting himself as a person. We, the infinite, have limited ourselves, as it were, into small parts. The Vedanta says that infinity is our true nature. It will never vanish. It will abide forever. But we are limiting ourselves by our karma, which, like a chain round our necks, has dragged us into this limitation. Break that chain, and be free. Be free, and then have any number of personalities you like. Then you will play like the actor who comes upon the stage and plays the part of a beggar. Contrast him with the actual beggar walking in the streets. The scene is perhaps the same in both cases. The words are perhaps the same, but yet, what a difference. The one enjoys his beggary, while the other is suffering misery from it. And what makes this difference? The one is free, and the other is bound. The actor knows his beggary is not true, but that he has assumed it for the sake of a play, while the real beggar thinks that it is his too familiar state and that he has to bear with it, whether he wills it or not. Our scripture also gives us promises. The Katha Upanishad says, with whom the Lord is pleased, to that man he expresses himself. With whom the Lord is pleased, to that man he expresses himself. He is fulfilled by eudaimonia. Those who are evildoers, whose minds are not peaceful, can never see the light, who do not follow arete, who do not follow virtues, who are against nature and try to control it. It is to those who are true in heart, pure indeed, whose senses are controlled, that this self, capital self, manifests itself. The potentiality of our divine seed is known only when it sprouts and grows. The growth of a man is known only through his actions, guided by the Spirit. Every moment of goodness and real life that we enjoy is when we do not think of ourselves. Life on the plane of the Spirit is the only life. Thank you. announcements. October 18th. Swami Vedarupananda. Is that correct? Next Sunday, October 18th, Swami Vedarupananda will talk on true faith.
Also, we have the Navaratri coming up. On Navaratri begins on October 17th, that's on Saturday, and we'll have the Jai Sri Durga chanting, and many devotees will pledge to chant 1,000 or 5,000 or even 10,000 a day.
As many times.
Jai Sri Durga, and every day for the 9 nights, the 10 days of the Navaratri, October 17 to 26. And on Saturday, October 24 at 10:30 in the morning, we have Durga Puja at our Santa Barbara temple. It'll be streamed on our Santa Barbara YouTube channel, not this one, but the Santa Barbara YouTube channel. And that evening, from 6:04 to 6:52, will be the Sandhi Puja, where we'll all come here in the temple together and chant Jai Sri Durga, followed by the Arati. So Arati will be late after the chanting.
Some people come here.
Those are the...
No,
public is not invited. It's only you're joining us virtually. Public is not invited.
Okay.
Public is invited to join us via YouTube.
Very good.
And Durga Puja also is, public is not permitted to attend in person, but is invited to attend via the digital means.
Virtually.
Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, that outer world is Purna, full of divine consciousness. This inner world is also Purna, full of divine consciousness. From Purna comes Purna. From fullness of divine consciousness, the world is manifested. Taking Purna from Purna, Purna indeed remains, because divine consciousness is non-dual and infinite. Om, peace, peace, peace be into all. Thank you.